Okay, let's dive in. We're talking about a name today that, well, everyone knows. Gucci. Style, luxury, Italian craftsmanship. It conjures up all these images.
It really does. But beneath that famous double G logo, the sources we've looked at paint a, let's say, much more complicated picture.
Definitely not just a fashion house. It was this kind of crucible, wasn't it? For really sensational corporate conflict, these intense family battles.
And the pressures, the incredible pressures of inherited wealth, that's a huge part of the story.
So when people think Gucci, they often remember the glamour, maybe the shocking end to Maurizio's story.
Right, the murder. But what we're doing today is digging into the documents, the actual internal moves from, say, the late 20th century.
Yeah, we want to analyze those specific corporate strategies, the decisions made in boardrooms, the betrayals, frankly, that almost tore the whole thing apart.
Exactly. Our mission here is to understand those critical maneuvers and, place the whole Gucci family saga within that bigger picture of late 20th century corporate culture.
The excess, the concentration of global capital. It's all tied together. We've got some key documents here detailing the strategy, the power shifts.
And some broader economic stuff, too, about extreme wealth and what it does. It's like a roadmap, really.
It shows how when you've got billions tied up in family control, suddenly things like jealousy, ambition, even desperation, they become major corporate factors.
Absolutely. The stakes are massive, global even, but the drama driving it, it's incredibly personal.
So we see the logo everywhere, right? On bags, belts, you name it. But what did the sources actually tell us about the family behind it? The ones who seem determined to rip the empire apart.
What choices did they make? And why? That's what we want to unpack.
Okay, let's start with the brand itself.
Sure.
Before the big family blow up, we need to understand what Gucci meant in the 80s.
It wasn't just successful, it was like shorthand for a whole culture.
High-stakes corporate life, aggressive finance, and just, well, lavish spending by the guys at the top.
Oh, completely. It was the ultimate status symbol for the decade of debt, wasn't it? The sources capture that 80s vibe perfectly, mergers, acquisitions, leveraged buyouts.
Right, LBOs, and this sort of spectacular, sometimes ruthless accumulation of wealth, both corporate and personal.
And you can't talk about that era without mentioning the ultimate example of the imperial CEO.
RJR Nabisco's Ross Johnson. Of course. His spending was just legendary. He became this symbol of management feeling entitled to, well, treat the company coffers like their own personal bank account.
Exactly. The stories are wild, aren't they? A whole fleet of corporate jets, like 10 of them, celebrity golf tournaments paid for by the company.
Viewing the corporation as his personal kingdom, that's the phrase.
It is, but the really fascinating bit, the detail that links Johnson's, let's call it hubris, directly to Gucci.
You mean the gifts, the famous or maybe infamous gifts he handed out.
Yes. The sources detail him giving out these, like, $1,500 Gucci watches to employees. As some kind of corporate thank you, or maybe something else.
Corporate bribery, perhaps?
Could be. But that detail, that specific watch, is so key for understanding Gucci's place. A $1,500 Gucci watch back then. That wasn't just a nice present.
No, it was a statement. A piece of high valuation, like you could wear it.
Exactly. It positions Gucci not just as successful, but as the actual currency of corporate power and, hubris in that whole LBO era.
It was a signal, a visual and financial sign that you were playing in the big leagues. High finance, high debt, high stakes.
Right. Wearing that watch meant you were part of that rarefied air.
So how did this culture get so entrenched, where managers get these multi-million-dollar deals and $1,500 watches? Was it just greed?
Well, greed played a part, sure, but the economic structure of the time really fueled it. It was all built on massive debt, junk bonds, leveraged buyouts.
So you take a company private with all that debt.
The focus shifts completely, doesn't it? It becomes all about short-term, aggressive profit, squeeze everything out.
And the lavish spending, was that just enjoying the spoils?
Sometimes. But it also served a purpose. It reinforced the CEO's power, made them look untouchable. Sometimes it might have even masked the pressure underneath.
Or exploiting tax loopholes.
That too. Extravagant deductions were part of the game. And Gucci. They were perfectly positioned to supply the accessories for this new class of plutocrats. The watches, the briefcases.
So the price of the name, The symbolic power of Gucci wasn't just about leather goods. It was tangled up with the rise of this new financial elite, a very rapid, sometimes unstable rise.
Absolutely. And this connects directly to that broader theme in the sources about, plutocrats and the concentration of extreme wealth. It's a pattern. We've seen it before.
Like the Gilded Age, right? The Rockefellers, the Carnegies, these
Yeah.
massive concentrated fortunes. The data shows similar dynamics.
Yeah, the sources mention private wealth in Europe back then, sometimes hitting like 6 or 7 years of national income.
Yeah.
It's almost impossible to grasp that level of concentration.
And that kind of wealth brings a unique kind of power, doesn't it?
Totally. The sources mention Andrew Carnegie, for example. He could basically operate outside normal business rules.
Right. He could just decide to work in spurts, ditch his partners in Pittsburgh for a 2-month trip to New Orleans and Jacksonville.
With a huge entourage, partners, family, lawyers, the works. Extreme wealth always lets you step outside the usual expectations, demand personalized luxury service.
And Gucci, in the late 20th century, was just providing the modern symbols for that same phenomenon.
Yeah.
The watches, the luggage, markers for this incredible concentration of capital.
It proves the point, really. Whether you're a Gilded Age tycoon or an 80s LBO king, the super rich need brands that reflect just how exceptional they are.
And that status, that symbolic value, that's ultimately what Maurizio Gucci was fighting to control.
Exactly, which brings us right to the heart of the family conflict.
Okay, so that massive symbolic and financial weight sets the stage for the big corporate battle within Gucci in the 80s. And the core fight, according to the sources, was Maurizio Gucci versus his uncle, Aldo.
Right, and this wasn't some polite disagreement over design direction. No, this was a fast-moving corporate coup.
And the trigger, the thing that really kicked it off, was external pressure, which is classic in takeover fights, especially in family businesses, right?
Oh, absolutely. A key strategic principle: find the weakness. And in this case, the weakness, the immediate vulnerability Maurizio seized on, was Aldo's, his tax issues.
The sources are really clear on that. This legal problem Aldo had, it created the perfect storm, the perfect opening for the power shift Maurizio apparently wanted for a while.
Definitely. When wealth is concentrated like this, in a family structure, one member's legal trouble can become a massive threat to the whole empire.
Or a massive opportunity for someone else within it.
Precisely. Aldo's tax problems weren't just a personal issue for him. They made him strategically unstable as the leader of a global brand.
But Maurizio, despite wanting control, apparently hesitated at first to move against his own uncle.
Yeah, there seems to have been some initial reluctance, familial ties and all that. But this is where his advisors, particularly Domenico De Sole, really stepped in.
What did the documents say about De Sole's role?
De Sole saw the situation very clearly. He realized Aldo's legal threat wasn't just a fine or a slap on the wrist. It was potentially catastrophic for the company's leadership.
He saw it as an unavoidable crisis.
Exactly. And he had to make Maurizio understand the urgency. Maurizio might have still been feeling, guilty about moving against family.
And that's when De Sole delivered that really sharp warning, the quote we have.
Yeah, it's incredibly direct. He basically told Maurizio, "You don't understand. If Aldo goes to jail, he is not going to be there anymore to run the company. Something must be done."
Wow. That just cuts right through everything, doesn't it?
It's the sound of corporate reality crashing into family loyalty. That's the moment, you can imagine, where Maurizio had to shift his thinking.
From Gucci as a family heirloom.
To Gucci as a vulnerable corporation needing immediate, decisive, almost surgical intervention.
So Maurizio's bigger dream, his far-reaching goal to create a new Gucci, suddenly became dependent on getting rid of Aldo right now.
Because the external legal situation made Aldo's leadership impossible. The timing was forced upon him in a way.
But here's a question, though. If Maurizio really wanted this new Gucci built on integrity, a fresh start, wouldn't exploiting his uncle's downfall kind of poison the well from the start?
That's the ethical tightrope, isn't it?
Was that level of ruthlessness actually necessary, or was it just ambition seizing an opportunity?
That's a great question. The sources suggest that in these kinds of family-controlled structures, what's called patrimonial control, based on inheritance, not just merit, maybe ruthlessness is sometimes the only way to force change.
Because Aldo represented the old way.
Yeah.
The post-war expansion, family first, maybe resistant to modern corporate governance.
Exactly. He was the old guard. If Maurizio wanted to pivot Gucci into that globalized, finance-driven luxury market of the late 80s, early 90s, he couldn't afford a slow transition.
He needed a decisive break, a corporate victory.
Precisely. And Aldo's external problem provided the perfect lever. It might have forced Maurizio's hand, but it also gave him the justification he needed to dismantle the old regime.
So when the stakes are billions, family loyalty takes a backseat to strategic necessity, especially when tax authorities are knocking at the door.
It often seems that way in these situations. The pressure of that concentrated wealth creates a really fragile system. Personal crises instantly become corporate opportunities. It's a harsh lesson.
Okay, so Aldo's vulnerable. The coup is necessary in Maurizio's view. Now he needs to actually do it. He needs to seize control of the board.
Right, and for that, he and his advisors, Poloni and De Sol, needed allies. Specifically, they needed one crucial vote from inside the family.
From one of his cousins. And the way the sources describe him choosing, it's cold, like a clinical risk assessment.
It really is. It's fascinating. He's basically running through his own family members, evaluating them not on loyalty or history, but purely on corporate usefulness and their appetite for risk.
Like an elimination round. Who's going to help him pull this off?
Exactly. Who's the weakest link, strategically speaking, from his perspective?
So let's look at who he ruled out. First cousin, Giorgio. What was the verdict there?
Giorgio got filed under too safe. The description is reserved, traditional, and loyal to Aldo.
So loyal to the guy Maurizio needed to oust. Not helpful.
Not at all. Giorgio's fatal flaw in Maurizio's eyes was he wouldn't want to rock the boat. He liked stability, good in peacetime, useless in a corporate war.
Okay, so Giorgio's out. Then there was Roberto, even more conservative.
Apparently so. Roberto's assessment was all about his personal situation. He was seen as even more conservative, and his main focus was just ensuring a future for his 6 children.
Ah, so very risk-averse.
Highly risk-averse, heavily invested in keeping things exactly as they were because that guaranteed income for his big family. No way was he going to join some high-stakes, destabilizing revolt.
So both Giorgio and Roberto were too tied to the old ways, too comfortable with the status quo.
Too vested in predictable outcomes. Not the allies Maurizio needed for his aggressive takeover plan.
Which leaves the really unlikely choice, the one everyone probably thought was impossible.
Paolo, the family's designated black sheep, known for being eccentric, always clashing at the company.
And the sources mentioned they weren't even speaking at the time. Paolo and Maurizio had stopped talking 2 years earlier after some boardroom fight.
Yeah, a major family feud was still fresh, so Maurizio had to overcome that recent history, that personal dislike.
So why him? Why pick Paolo, someone he clearly didn't trust, over maybe trying harder with the others? What made Paolo the target?
One simple, brutal reason. Money. Or rather, the lack of it.
Financial desperation.
Exactly. The source material is crystal clear. Paolo was pragmatic and in financial difficulty. He had already managed to spend the settlement he had received from Gucci.
He'd blown through his previous payout.
Completely. And that personal financial mess made him politically available. He needed cash, fast, and Maurizio had the capital to offer him a deal.
A deal in exchange for his board vote. And his help taking down Aldo.
That's the calculus. Financial need trumps family feuds, ideology, personal history, everything.
It's incredibly cynical, in a way.
Or incredibly strategic, depending on your viewpoint. Maurizio saw Paolo's immediate, desperate need for money made him willing to betray the old structure. The decision was quick, unsentimental.
Just make him an offer. And source says he just picked up the phone and dialed Paolo's number in New York.
Yep. End of strategy session. It's a textbook example, really, of leveraging someone's personal weakness for corporate advantage.
And this choice, the specific move, really highlights that concept you mentioned from the sources, patrimonial capitalism. How does Paolo fit into that idea?
Well, patrimonial capitalism, as the economist Piketty describes it in the source material, is basically a system where inherited wealth, capital ownership, is the main source of power and control, often much more than, say, talent or hard work.
Right, control passed down through bloodlines.
Exactly, and the Gucci story shows the dark side of that. When control is based on inheritance, the personal flaws of the inheritors, like Paolo's spending habits or Aldo's tax issues, they don't just stay personal problems.
They become massive corporate risks, existential threats even.
Precisely. So it's not just that inherited money can lead to inequality, it's that the people who inherit these empires can sometimes be the ones least equipped to manage them or most likely to destabilize them through their own issues, amplified by having so much wealth.
So the stability of this global luxury brand basically hinged on Paolo needing cash right now.
That's what it boiled down to in that moment. It shows how personal drama and corporate control are totally intertwined in these family empires. An empire is only as stable as its most desperate member.
And Maurizio's well, genius maybe, was seeing that and using it.
Using it to clear the path for his vision. A new Gucci, financed differently, structured differently, built on the wreckage of the old family system.
Okay, so Maurizio pulls off the coup. He gets control, restructures, eventually sells his stake. But the story obviously doesn't end smoothly.
No, it doesn't. The sources then shift focus to the climax, the really tragic part, Maurizio's murder. And the setting becomes crucial here. Milan.
A city where, as the sources suggest, big money, corporate power, and serious crime often intersect.
Very much so. And the specific locations mentioned in the aftermath of the murder, they really underline the seriousness, the danger that surrounds these huge corporate fortunes in Italy.
Let's talk about where Patrizia Reggiani was taken after. Well, after the investigation pointed to her, the police car, it says, sped through Milan's empty streets.
To the criminal pole headquarters, which is located in Piazza San Sepolcro, Holy Sepulchre Square.
And the location itself is significant.
Hugely significant. It's right behind the Milan Stock Exchange, the Borsa Italiana. Think about that geography.
The heart of Italian finance, right next door to the headquarters, investigating major crimes.
Exactly. That physical closeness speaks volumes about the overlap between finance, power, and crime in Milan. It highlights the environment, the potential for things to get very dangerous when big money is involved.
And the building itself, Palazzo Castani, it's not just some modern office block.
No, not at all. It's historic. Parts of it date back to the Renaissance. It's described as a 3-story building with a vaulted portico, a central courtyard.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
So you have this gritty, modern police function fighting sophisticated crime housed inside this place of historical significance and beauty.
It's a powerful contrast, isn't it? It perfectly mirrors the Gucci story itself. This centuries-old legacy, this idea of beauty and craftsmanship, tangled up in a brutal, modern crime driven by immense wealth.
It really grounds the story, takes it beyond just fashion or family drama into something much heavier. High-stakes crime, corporate power.
Right. And this setting reinforces the kind of world the police were operating in. This wasn't just a domestic dispute gone wrong. It was a murder connected to one of Italy's most famous, most valuable corporate names.
And there's an anecdote in the sources that really drives home the danger, the pressure on law enforcement in Milan back then, about a police official.
Yes, Dotto Nini. It's a chilling little story.
There's a direct quote from a Calabrian mafia boss, Salvatore Batti, speaking to Dotto Nini in court.
Yeah, Batti says to him, Dotto Nini, se voi non fuste una persona onesta, avesse la morte.
Which translates to,
If you weren't an honest man, you'd have been killed already.
wow. That's quite a compliment and quite a threat.
Exactly. It's both at the same time. It tells you everything about the power and the lethal intent swirling around organized crime and high finance in that city.
Integrity wasn't just a virtue, it was a survival strategy.
Absolutely. When you're dealing with fortunes the size of the Gucci's, the stakes aren't just financial anymore. They can be literally life and death.
So the investigation into Maurizio's murder unfolded within this context, this physical place, this political reality that was acutely aware of the corruption and danger that can shadow huge concentrations of wealth.
The corporate coup, achieved by exploiting family weaknesses, ultimately led to a criminal end, played out right there in the shadow of Milan's ancient centers of power.
So wrapping this up, our deep dive into the House of Gucci. It's really gone way beyond the glossy surface, hasn't it?
Yeah, definitely. We've seen a world driven by, well, pretty ruthless corporate strategy, the calculated exploitation of family weaknesses.
And the huge personal cost, the damage done when power and wealth get so concentrated within one family, one dynasty.
And it's clear how vulnerable these massive family fortunes are. Vulnerable to internal pressures, personal failings. Maurizio's victory, his corporate success, required him to basically sacrifice his family relationships.
He used their debt, their legal problems, their resistance to change against them.
Right. And you see echoes of that same pressure, that same fear of exploitation in other dynasties, too. The sources mention the Rockefellers.
Yes. John D. Rockefeller's daughter, Edith, trying to protect the family fortune, becoming incredibly spiteful.
To the point of trying to sabotage her own daughter, Mathilde's marriage, sending that telegram to her father, John D. Sr., warning him off.
Calling Mathilde's husband just a fortune hunter, Mr. Ozer. Don't even receive him.
It shows that profound, almost paranoid pressure that comes with guarding vast wealth. Protecting the capital can become more important than family bonds.
These stories, these dynastic struggles, they really highlight a basic tension, don't they? The sources talk about the sheer scale and speed of wealth accumulation in this kind of system.
and how it seems to generate extreme behavior, whether it's Ross Johnson's corporate excess, Paolo Gucci's financial desperation, or, ultimately, Patrizia Reggiani's active revenge.
So thinking about the strategies we've unpacked today, those cold, calculated moves Maurizio made to take apart the old Gucci structure, here's the final thought we want to leave you with.
Maurizio's corporate win came from exploiting his family's weaknesses. Now, considering the immense pressure that inherited wealth puts on people, are the skills needed to build a new corporate vision fundamentally different from the ones needed to tear down the old one?
Does achieving that kind of radical corporate change, especially when it means destroying a family legacy, exploiting personal flaws, does it inevitably require a certain kind of person? A unique set of skills?
Or maybe a lack of certain morals, a willingness to be utterly ruthless.
We've seen how, in that high-stakes world of concentrated capital, strategic ruthlessness often looks like a prerequisite for success.
It makes you wonder, doesn't it? Is that level of calculation just part of the price of admission to operate at the very top of patrimonial capitalism? Something to think about.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the true cost of luxury.
We'll catch you next time for more essential insights from the deep dive.